As a teacher, you have to devote your life to education and the pursuit of knowledge. Learning never ends, as new techniques and best practices are developed year after year. Technology changes faster than the tides and also creates new and innovative ways to educate the children of tomorrow. Hello, my name is Samantha. This project discusses my journey into special education teaching and my decision towards pursuing another master's in education degree at UTSA. I'll also explore the connection between learning theories and interdisciplinary learning, plus my application of these theories in my own classroom. I began my teaching journey with a master's in education degree at University of Phoenix. While working as a sub, I encountered so many different students, grades, and subjects, but it felt like I spent the majority of my time at the elementary school, even though my primary area of study was middle school. I finally took a job working in pre-K and fell in love with the job, the kids, but mostly the adventure. I love learning, and that has served me so well in my life and career. As John Dewey says, education is not preparation for life. Education is life. I feel like you never stop learning, so it's important to, at the earliest age possible, find an enjoyment to learning and have a passion to keep learning new things. Dewey's progressive teaching view really resonates with me in my current job, and is also one of the reasons why I wanted to pursue more. Teachers are not just educators. Our impact extends far beyond the regular classroom, so it's even more important that students who face difficult home situations, mental and physical handicaps, learning disabilities, or other illnesses have a teacher who has the ability to interact with students at all stages of development and from all walks of life. Seeing this deficit in my own district gave me the desire to find a way to help be a part of the overall solution. I needed to get the formalized education that went with teaching special needs children at all stages of development. I therefore decided to pursue an additional master's in education with a concentration of special education at UTSA. Furthermore, I decided that concentrating on behavioral analysis with an overall goal of becoming a BCBA would benefit my drive for full inclusion settings at my school. Being able to provide the perspective of all three professions and being willing to make the time sacrifice, if necessary, to aid in the creation and sustainability of a full inclusion setting. Teaching special education means you may have to overcome significant achievement gaps. A study done by the National Center of Educational Outcomes shown that the achievement gap for special education reading, according to any grade level, remained at 32 to 41%. Strangely, I once felt that the achievement gap was specifically geared towards academics, and the sole responsibility to fix the gap needed to lay with the teacher, but this is not the case. The achievement gap is greatly affected by the socio-political nature of the school, the funding the school receives, and the community the school supports. Latz and Billings described the achievement gap as an economical one, not just race and class, as well as talked about the decades of struggles people have faced to get quality education for their children. She coined the term education debt, saying that historical, economic, socio-political, and moral decisions and policies which shape our society have created this education gap, and the logical outcome is an achievement gap. Her work with an economist helped her to make sense of debts not related to education having an impact on education because of funding sacrifices. The diversity of today's classroom makes it necessary to use a mix of best practices and techniques. It is also important to be able to work on the creation of your own techniques by taking the parts of each you like and merging them into a new interdisciplinary technique. Moran talked about first having an understanding of the existing disciplines before we can understand interdisciplinary, because they all interact together, and how interdisciplinary has a new way of looking at disciplines altogether. Nisani talks about how historical disciplines have gaps because of problems which arise which fall outside of the discipline or may fall in many. Therefore, common sense would say we need to change disciplines, combine disciplines, or create new disciplines, defined as interdisciplinary, in order to tackle these complex practical problems. With the ever-changing diversity of classrooms, it's important for me to have a mix of disciplines to work with. I'm often combining or breaking apart a discipline to fit the needs of my students, or the particular problem that I'm facing. That's why I found it beneficial to learn about some of the disciplines in this class, which I've not traditionally used. These will help me greatly, as they have given me more to work with for problems I've yet to face in my classroom. As a teacher, one of my roles is to protect my students from stereotypes, which can be good and bad. Schools have not been sheltered from the negativity of stereotypes. In fact, many schools have faced significant problems with teachers applying stereotypes and bias in their teaching, curriculum, and school culture. Anion talks about schools catering to the social class of the students, parents, and their community. Work and student projects were geared towards the inherent social class. In our room, we try to ensure that we don't create bias or inject our own feelings in our lessons. Our role is to facilitate activities to allow students to learn on their own. I maintain an open mind in my classroom and create activities so students can learn about their classmates in a safe environment and overcome their stereotypes. My classroom is a safe place for all students. We don't tolerate name-calling or bullying in our school, and we have harsh punishment protocols in place to deal with students who use these tactics in and out of school. In my class, students are taught some moral lessons using fun characters about sharing, safe space, etc. We teach them to respect themselves and their peers equally. A pre-K classroom is unique to other learning environments because students are learning through play, but also learning to learn. I feel that to learn, it needs to come naturally to my students. As Dewey says, give pupils something to do, not something to learn. And the doing is in such a nature as to demand thinking, learning naturally results. In pre-K, we build on prior knowledge to construct learning. We allow the kids to play and interact with the environment within the class to learn from us and each other. I design my classroom to focus more on the construction side than the instruction side of the line shown above. I feel as students construct new learning, they pull from prior knowledge to make the right connections. I also feel that because they are learning in a more social environment, they use those interactions to form correct behaviors and to work out complex problems with peers and themselves. Like Vygotsky believed, children being social beings, their cognitive development was directed by social interactions. Piaget was more grounded in the child's independence and that they were self-centered activities that drove development. In pre-K, we try not to do many activities that are self-centered. However, we do allow the students to decide which area they want to go to, allowing them to make their own decisions, hoping they decide where to interact best with their peers. Pre-K is very situational, and our content is tied to learning through interacting with peers, teachers, and the curriculum. We teach the students by making connections with things they encounter every day. Again, most of pre-K is based on a sort of constructionist approach. Children learn by building and constructing things. In our classroom, we work hard to incorporate technology into the classroom wherever possible. Students are allowed to play interactive educational games on the computers during center time. These games have been approved by our district to help guide learning. As Papert says, it may seem like the students are just playing with toys, but they are playing with toys in a sophisticated way, which allows them to learn and build on their learning. This is a philosophy used greatly in Head Start and Pre-K. We hope by playing with blocks, Legos, and even household toys, they will learn valuable lessons about science, math, and history. We sing fun songs and incorporate movement with many lessons to help students connect academics with physical activities. Students are more engaged in learning, and they learn more. Diversity is very important in the classroom today. Teachers need to be prepared for the diversity being addressed with students. My students come from many backgrounds. Some military students have traveled the world already by the time they are 4. I have to realize I'm encountering many unique types of families, and it's important to the classroom that we see every family as positive. We do an entire lesson on families, talking about how families are all different but have similar features. We talk about families with one parent, multiple sets of parents, etc. At pre-K, we have yet to encounter the need to talk about the sexuality of students or families because our students are so young, but I see how it would be important to be able to address this in upper grades. My son's high school has on-campus clubs dedicated to LGBT students, providing them with a place for friendship and refuge when needed. Also a way to show that the climate in schools is changing to greater acceptance. Meyer talks about how policy changes addressing bullying and harassment in schools need to be clear and protocols for implementation well known. Meyer also talks about how the school can train student leaders to help support their policies in areas of the school which are normally only for students. Engaging leaders in schools along with informed sessions for all students on policies and procedures. Our school conducts anti-bullying education through our school counselor for all students with activities and student-led projects. Special education is also unique because the students have many differences, and at 4 or 5, they might not be able to understand that themselves. Regular education students need to be aware of the other students' differences without creating a bias or fear towards the student. Just telling them that they need to have acceptance of their peers and look past any physical disabilities. The hardest for my students are those kids who have no physical characteristics of a disability. I work very hard to explain why tolerance is greater for their behaviors without actually saying they get special treatment. We want the kids to understand the difference, but we also want them to see that we treat everyone equally. So how has this class changed the way I approach my own classroom and future classrooms? I realized how the importance of knowing more about the people and philosophies of education. I know now that I need to keep abreast of all research-based best practices that come up to make sure I'm offering my students all the opportunities I can for learning and growing. I plan to try and implement more scaffolding within my class to allow for my students to bring more about their particular culture into the classroom to share with us. I'm thinking how valuable it would be to get a little more background from my parents as to students' interests so I can have things in the classroom they recognize from their homes. I want to make stronger connections with the special needs students in my room so we can move to a more inclusive environment, and I know many of the things I've learned will help me to research best practices for working with students with diverse and special needs.